Hey everybody, it's Sharyn here from Content Sparks with our latest launch of Essential Finance Skills for Small Business Owners. And I have a special guest with me today. So you have not met him before, or maybe some of you have. This is Jacob. And I know some of you will be watching this in the replay, but you can always put your comments down and tag me, and I'll look out for those. As we go through this, because it's a finance skills course, it's a little bit different from what we've done before. You can always pop your questions in, and I've got Jacob here to support me in this, to help with answering questions and stuff. So Jacob, do you want to just quickly introduce yourself?
Sure. Hey everyone, my name is Jacob. I supported with the creation of this finance course, and I have been a fractional CFO for the last 4 years, supporting small businesses and startups with their finances, handling their books, supporting with financial projections, and much more. So just here to answer any questions that you have, anything that Sharyn can't answer specifically, I'm here to support.
I will do the best I can. I'm going to be going through primarily the slides from the course, and you'll be able to see that anyone pretty much can teach this. And when you do get some sort of question, we'll answer them now as best we can. But if you are not an accountant, let's say, and you get a question from one of your students, just be careful about answering that unless you know what you're talking about. That's where you will want to refer them to an accountant. Okay, I just want to make that disclaimer right from the front. We've kept this very simple, but enough in depth for any small business owner or entrepreneur who's just getting going. People are going to be at different levels, but they're going to have a really good understanding. So with that, I'm going to switch over to the slides so that you can see what we're going to be talking about. Just quickly, this is the sales page you'll land on for this course. It's contentsparks.com/smallbizfinance. So I'll pop that up again later because I want to just focus on the course itself and what's in there. But this is what you'll see. And then when you scroll down, you'll also see a little more description of what's in each one of the modules of the course. And there should be something about a bonus. So this is all the materials in here, which I will show you. And then there's a launch bonus, which I can also show you later, which is also great for a lead magnet so that you can bring people into the course. You'll see what their mindset is around finance right from the beginning, and that can kind of qualify them too. So that's what you'll see when you go to that URL. And say hi as you come in as well. And again, I see people are coming in. Just ask any questions as we go along. I'm not going to go through absolutely every detail in the course because we have a little less than an hour, and this is more than an hour-long course. Okay, so stop me if you have a question. All right. So let me go back here, and again, contentsparks.com/smallbizfinance. Hi, Therese. I've got Therese here. Hey, Therese, how are you doing? And Andre and Nettie, and people are all coming in. Ask away all your questions. I know people have been waiting for this course for quite a long time, and it's been a long time in the making. All right. Thanks, Andre. Appreciate it. And April as well. Hey, April. All right, let's switch over because there's a lot to talk about here, okay? Slideshow. All right, when you get the course, you get this folder: materials, student, instructor, lead generation. The primary materials in here are the student and the instructor materials. This is the core of the course. And the core part I'm going to show you is in the instructor materials, the slideshow, which has notes underneath. So you have explanations, and you'll see here, let me open this up. you'll see in here these notes underneath each that come from the course book, and that will guide you so that you can have a prop to explain this stuff. All right. So let me make this full screen so that you can see this as well and not just my face. All right. Back here again, let me make these a little smaller. Okay. If you can't see it, let me know. If you can't hear me, let me know. And if you have questions. All right, let's dive in. So, essential finance skills for small business owners. All right. Sorry about that. This is, like I said, for small business owners. So anyone who is in the early stages or struggling to grow, they may already be growing and have a business, but that doesn't mean their finances are under control. A lot of people start out with just maybe an Excel spreadsheet or maybe just looking at their PayPal account and using it like a bank account, and things can get out of control very quickly. But in order to grow, achieve business goals, manage your cash, find ways to cut costs, you need to have your finances organized, have a financial system. So in this course, you're going to be going through establishing that finance mindset, even if people are very resistant to it or afraid of math and numbers, separating personal and business finances, even businesses that have been going along for a while, especially if it's a solo business owner, they often get the two mixed up, and that can cause a lot of problems we'll talk about. Basic bookkeeping best practices, very important. Even if you have a bookkeeper, you need to understand this. And along with that is interpreting 3 key reports that every business, no matter how big or small, no matter what type of business that your students are in, they're going to get balance sheet, profit and loss statement, and a cash flow statement they need to understand. And we go through interpreting each of those as well. And then there's creating a picture of your business finances. So looking ahead and forecasting sales and expenses and budgeting, understanding that, reviewing your own personal financial needs. So making sure your business actually can support you. And then looking at some key numbers and ratios to understand and assess your business's health, so you can create an action plan. Where do you need to cut costs? Where do you need to increase revenue? Where might you need to raise money? Look at where all the money is coming from and going out. All right. So that's what you're going to cover. There's a bunch of stuff on learning objectives we talked about. And there is a nice little quiz in the action guide that I'm not going to show you, but it's great about assessing people's confidence. Charles said, greetings, Sharyn. Deeply excited about this new course. Finances are so fundamental to business success and often skipped over by other trainers and content providers in favor of other more sexy business topics. Who said finance can't be sexy? Come on. Yeah, we're going to do our best. All right. But yeah, a lot of people skip it over, and that's when you get into a lot of trouble. So let's go back over this. Impact of financial management. So this is where you're going to be able to explain just how important it is. So when running a business, cash is everything, right? It keeps the lights on. You can pay your staff. Without it, you can't grow your business. And a lot of business owners just, like you said, Charles, don't understand how important it is. And the people teaching it don't understand it until it's too late. And then they're scrambling around, trying to find all their expenses, or they might even run out of money altogether. And Therese, you said this is a great combo with how to start a business. Yes, absolutely. In that course, I don't have it in front of me, but in that course, there's a little bit about some of the financial stuff in starting a business, but this is essential for running a business. All right. So it will help them with moving forward. I would start with the Start Your Own Business course. And then as they have some numbers and stuff, this would be the next step. All right. So very important. Tracking expenses and profit. It's like checking your bank account, balancing your bank account. Helps you make the financial decisions. And when tax season rolls around, how do you know what taxes you need to pay? Right? Some of the problems So cash flow, you need to look at, you get cash flow struggles, things like, if you have to delay your supplier payments, that hurts relationships with them. If you miss debt repayment, it affects your credit rating. You have to be able to, you end up having to cover business expenses with personal funds or credit, which can get really expensive. If you have late salary payments, this is all the stuff, then your employee morale goes down. All of this is why it's so essential, starting with the cash flow, that cash struggles that a lot of people get. You can get mounting debt that forces bankruptcy. It's hard to stay competitive if you don't have cash. So that's the core initially of why it's so important for this whole course and why you're going to need to teach it. And go through it yourself. When you have cash flow management, great cash flow management, you can track, you can anticipate and plan, budget, plan for more financial needs and expansion, make better decisions, not throw your money in the wrong direction, cut costs where it makes sense, not where it's going to harm the business, things like that. And when you have everything organized, there's a lot less effort involved when it does come to any kind of managing of your finances. So I think you're probably getting that by now, the importance of all of that. And I'm going to move ahead then to, is it personal or is it business? So in this particular module, it's all about separating out what's your personal finances, what are your business finances, and honing in on the business expenses so that you know which is which. Because like I said before, a lot of people do get them mixed up, which can cause some serious disasters. So keeping it separate protects your personal assets, makes it more accurate for reporting for taxes, tracking the financial health, all of that stuff. Get a better picture, your business score, all these things. One of the things I want to highlight here is opening up separate bank accounts, because this is a very easy way to keep things separate. And that also includes things like your PayPal, right? A lot of people, when they're starting out, just use their personal PayPal like a bank account. So things like that, you have to have a separate one, and you can even set up a separate credit card for your business. All helps you keep it separate. Keeping a record of expenses, paying them off monthly. You can set up auto pay, reviewing things monthly, also essential. So all of that with the financial records, you can consult with a professional for all of that if it's really difficult. Okay, so that's another thing. Sometimes if you're not sure which is which, that's where an accountant or a bookkeeper comes in handy. So one of the first things they'll do in this first lesson is actually look at banks. If your students don't already have a separate bank or separate bank account for the business side, that's one of the things they need to do, and setting up auto pay for certain business related bills or recurring tasks on your calendar so you don't forget to pay bills, which is surprisingly or not something that does happen very often. Somebody will, even in businesses that have been around for a while, a small business, somebody gets a bill, they don't know what to do with it because they don't know what category it goes in. They stick it in a drawer, and then 3 months later, it's overdue. It happens. So it sounds obvious, but it isn't. All right, then you're going to have people go through business expenses. Their costs incurred to generate revenue and to operate a business. Those are the two key categories. Personal expenses are things for individual needs. So those are the guidelines to think about when separating them. So review the purpose of the expense, check the type of expense, consider the timing, and document it. Though that's the process with every single expense that comes in that you need to do. So one of the first things you'll do here is have people locate all their documents that would have business expenses in them and actually mark them. Start that process, which a lot of people do not do. So this is a time to do that. It takes little time. If you're doing this in some sort of live format, you will have to be able to break it up so people can go off and do this kind of work. It's a much harder course to do in person. You really need to drip it out more so that they'll be able to do this kind of work. And then there's a whole module in setting up financial systems. So this is one you do not want to skip over. There are essential bookkeeping practices and actually using bookkeeping software. Some of your students may not have bookkeeping software. They may not know anything about bookkeeping. So go through this. Even if they've done it before, it'll help with reminding them. But don't skip over the bookkeeping part, because that's what gets you into trouble later on with any business, even right from the start. If you don't have accurate books, you don't know what's going on, you don't know what taxes you need to pay, you can't analyze anything. Even if there isn't a lot to put in there, you need to have it. So there's essential bookkeeping best practices. So bookkeeping, if you're not familiar with the term, is recording financial transactions, organizing them, and maintaining those records. It's as simple as that. So it helps with establishing internal controls. Accrual accounting, I'll just stop on this for a second, because I'm sure a lot of people have not heard this term before. Accrual accounting records income and expenses when they are earned or incurred, not when the money is received or paid. So a lot of businesses start out with what they call cash accounting, just looking at cash in and cash out. But that doesn't give you an accurate picture. So for instance, if you are a coach, you know that you send out a bill, but you may not get paid until a month later. That's your accounts receivable. Did I get that right, Jacob? Yeah, that's your accounts receivable, the ones that you're waiting to receive. And accounts payable is what you owe. So you might get a bill, you know it's not due until the end of the month, so you wait until the cash goes out. But a lot of people just record based on cash in, cash out. That's not a very accurate way to do it. And you want to make sure with bookkeeping, you're recording it based on when it's earned and when it's owed. Right? Yes. Okay.
Yes.
Yes. All right. Let me make sure I got it right. If that's not clear, stop me and I'll make Jacob explain it instead. I have Jacob here as my expert I'll just show you. He's quietly listening to me and waiting to answer questions that I can't answer, because he's been a fractional CFO, if you didn't hear his intro earlier, and worked with a lot of small companies and startups and helped them with their finances and fixing their finances as well. We've got a quick question here. Therese, I love using video. What are your thoughts on recording the lessons and presenting through video? Absolutely. And what you can do, what's great about this with video is you can use these slides to go through and record your video explaining everything, then have people do the action steps. So there's no reason for you to necessarily do that part live. But then do a live Q&A afterwards, because people will have questions or get stuck in places. So I always recommend doing some sort of live Q&A in between the different sessions. Break it up. Don't make it one long video. Make each lesson a separate video with the action steps and then a Q&A. Okay? Really important to do. All right. So let me go back to full screen so you can see. We were talking about accrual counting, categorize transactions correctly. So and then there are different ways to categorize in bookkeeping software. So you categorize by the type of transaction, by the function, by the account they affect. So you might have multiple accounts, like different clients or businesses. All depends on the type of business you are. By location, it's some sort of location-based expense or revenue, and you might have different projects or different departments. Bookkeeping software has this already set up, and you can customize as well based on your business. So that's another reason to use a bookkeeping software, because it'll help you with organizing all of this. And then you have the action steps. So the action steps in this particular one is just to look at what you're already doing. in terms of best practices. And then you go into actually selecting one and starting to use it. So this is another really critical lesson to go through. So if people don't have one, you can go through some of the features to look for, like reports and some of the benefits as well, like streamlining tax filing. So talk about the benefits of it, and then and some of the things that can go wrong. So like transposition errors, having entries wrong. So some of the things that can go wrong. These are all things people need to understand around the benefits. And then in order to pick bookkeeping, you can go through some of the must-have features. So one of those things is report generation, balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow, the three critical reports that we're going to go through in this course, and you're going to be able to explain how to interpret them. All right. Those are must-have features. Then there's things like month-over-month reporting and invoicing. Depending on what someone needs, they might want to run invoices from the bookkeeping software. But these are pretty basic features of any software. You might want to pay bills from there, payroll if you have payroll management. So help people look at what features they want. And then reconciling, what's next? Oh, there's a note in here as well about planning your taxes in advance. So I just want to stop on this for 1 second, because one thing that people often don't do is think about saving money aside for taxes. They get to tax point and they didn't save enough cash. So a very easy way to deal with that is just for people to set up a separate bank account where they just save out money for taxes. All right. So just be aware of that and make sure you make that point as well, because people can get into trouble there. And then what's the next thing? Yes. Okay. So at the very end of that module, that lesson, if your students have already collected all their expenses, all their data, and marked it, what they need to do now with their bookkeeping software is make sure all that data is in the software, because that is how they're going to be able to run reports. They could try to reconstruct them in a spreadsheet, but that's going to be very complicated. It's best to just get that software, even if it's a free bookkeeping software, and get the information. And this is an investment in the future of the business, taking the time to put this in and running the reports. Okay. And Jacob, I think you mentioned there was a free bookkeeping software. What was that?
There is. It's called Wave. I believe it's waveapps.com. It's probably one of the best, if not the best, free bookkeeping software. It's very similar to QuickBooks and Xero, which are the two top ones. But it is completely free for invoicing and for the bookkeeping side of it.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. But remember, if it doesn't have what you need, I'm always very wary of free software, because it can be taken away from you. Somebody can, or it doesn't necessarily have the features. And something that's very core to your business, you should make sure that it's well supported if there are any problems. So core software, I'm always happy to pay for. It's an investment in the business again. And referring to taxes, Charles said, Uncle Sam expects his fair share. Yep. And not just Uncle Sam, every tax person in every country. And one thing you might notice in here as we go through is we've made this course applicable to pretty much any country. We're not going into tax law. We're not going into legal business setup stuff, some of the legal or local issues. That's something that your students are going to have to talk to their accountant or look up locally. That's not the point of this course. This course is looking at those essential finance skills that everybody needs to know. There are the balance sheet, the profit and loss, cash flow are essential for every type of business in any country. All right. So the end of this module, they put everything in, and now they're ready to go through the reports. And there are 3 key reports. All right. Those are what I talked about before: the balance sheet, profit and loss, cash flow. And in the course, you're going to be able to explain each of those reports and then how to interpret each of the reports as well. So you've got, let's see, lesson 1. So balance sheet, assets equals liabilities plus shareholders' equity at any point in time. That is the simple formula in a balance sheet. The assets are basically anything you own. So let me see if I have this right. Let me see if I can explain this right. So assets is anything you own. Liabilities is anything you owe, like if you borrow money. And shareholders' equity is any money you've taken in from investors. That's equity. So what you own is, can you explain this better than I am, Jacob?
Yeah, I never like these formulas for understanding assets, liabilities, and shareholders' equity, or otherwise known as owner's equity. But it's important just to think about the assets as what you have that's of value. So that could be anything from cash to land to a computer or other equipment. But it's also something like accounts receivable. So as you mentioned, that example of sending out an invoice but not getting paid for maybe a month or 3 months, that is considered part of your assets. It's expected revenue, expected cash to come in. Liabilities are the opposite of that. So if you have credit card debt or a loan, or even just a vendor debt. So if you're the one who owes money for this training, then that's going to be an accounts payable, or one of the accounts under a liability. And then shareholders' equity is I think a little less important to go into, but yes, it could be equal to the amount that that you have taken in from investors, but that's a little bit harder to explain, and honestly a little bit less important to go into.
Yeah, and Jacqueline was saying equity is the difference. Yeah, it's just the reverse of this formula. So assets minus liabilities would be equity. Yeah, so you could reverse that if you wanted. Okay, and moving on, some of the things you need to do. These are more of the benefits of having a balance sheet. So evaluating the size, determining your cash and credit availability, so you can look at that from a balance sheet by just looking at all the assets. It helps you with obtaining financing. So if you do need to get financing, you need to have a balance sheet to show people, and just making better decisions about resource allocation with your assets and stuff. So those are all the benefits. And we'll look at the interpreting side in a minute. This section of the course is really just looking at what each of these statements are. Profit and loss is your revenue, your costs and expenses over a period of time. It's also called an income statement, earnings statement, or statement of statement of operations. So also, just to point out, you can see there's notes underneath here. I'm referring to those. Those will be there for you as well if you get this course. Though I can make this a little bit smaller so you can see the slide. So you've got that there, and you can add to those as you go. All right. Jacqueline made another comment about profit and loss and equity. Equity includes profit/loss for the current year and all previous years as well. Jacob? Yeah,
so under shareholders' equity or owner's equity, there are a few line items if we want to get into it. It's current year profit or loss, so it could be a positive or negative number, and same thing for previous years. Usually it's called retained earnings. Will be the amount of previous year's profits combined.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. One more question. Does anything in the course mention the importance of keeping physical paper backups of financial documents? I don't think we talked about that earlier. I might have said organizing them in folders, but I don't think we talked about physical backups. Jacob, how important do you think that is?
It's important to have some form of backups, I'd say. If you take pictures of all of your receipts and you upload them to your bookkeeping software, that's usually enough. Maybe you keep a folder of those receipts as well, uh, as well as uploading them to your bookkeeping software, so you have them in two places. And then just I'd say maybe downloading your reports and maybe downloading what's called the general ledger from your bookkeeping software once, maybe every 3 months, 6 months, or 12 months, so that you have some backup of the ledger that you can then upload to another bookkeeping software, or if something very bad happened, which would be very rare to the software, then you'd have some form of a backup.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I never rely on physical stuff, but we take pictures of things, definitely. Let's see. Jacqueline said in Canada, the government requires to keep it for 7 years and then apply for permission to destroy them. I don't know if the US is like that, but this is where it's important to add what's relevant to the country where you're in this course, in a course like that. Okay? Because it's really important to add that sort of thing in. All right. You're going to need to customize and put in things like that. All right. Okay. All right. I'm going to continue on if that's okay. Hide that. All right. So profit and loss, revenue, costs, and expenses. So you need the profit and loss to measure the overall performance of the business, identify where you can increase profitability. So where are those profits coming from? Where are the losses coming from? So you can make changes. Where are you spending money? Where are those expenses going? And look at the performance over time from year to year, month to month. All of that is the profit and loss is going to show you that. And the cash flow statement, the third one, is the inflows and outflows. So how much cash is coming in and out? Where is it going? Cash is one of the most important things for smaller growing businesses because you can get very tight on cash and not be able to do anything and get into trouble. So that's why that's important to look at as well. And these are all in the bookkeeping software. So this is a point where you need to get people to actually run those reports and print them out so that you can then go through how to analyze them. All right. It's going to be a lot more helpful for people in a course like this to look at their own reports versus some fictitious one or sample one. All right. So then you go, this next module, the rest of the lessons in this module are all about interpreting those three reports. So balance sheet, identifying the current assets. I'm not going to go through all of this stuff because there are key questions at the end. This is more what to look at and interpret. And then at the end, there's questions to ask for people to be able to interpret their own. So they look at cash equivalents, inventory, accounts receivable, non-current assets. Those are things that can't be converted. So the first thing I said was the current assets are things you can convert into cash. That's on your balance sheet. And the non-current is things that are not easy to convert. And then in there's tangible and intangible. So a tangible asset is things like property, machinery, equipment, computers, things like that. Intangible aren't necessarily physical. So it might be a patent or copyright that's worth something. And then liabilities, there's also current and long-term. So those are things that you owe to other people and usually have to send money for, or something else. Could be a good or service that you owe. That's also a liability. So there's also current liabilities that are within the year, your operating cycle, or long-term that are settled over a longer period of time. And then there's that stakeholders equity, shareholders equity that we talked about a little bit before, that owner's equity. You'll hear different terms depending on who you're talking to. And that's what might have been invested. It could be what you've invested in the business from the beginning. All right. And also if you reinvest things, that's included in your equity. Cash ratio. This is something else that can be calculated from here. So that's cash plus cash equivalents divided by current liabilities. All right. This is one of those things to look at, all the different elements. And a ratio over 1 is what's best, because it means you have enough cash and cash equivalents to pay off debts. All right. Under 0.5 is risky because you're going to have a lot more trouble paying off debts. So this is one of the ratios we're going to look at. Let me just go back a second. Right. And this was all, we were looking all at the balance sheet. Okay. This is all from the balance sheet. Some other things you can tell from the balance sheet, composition of your assets and liability, liquidity. So, how fast can you get cash out, solvency, can you meet your debts? Are you growing? All those things come balance sheet. So you'll then have people look at their balance sheet from their, download it from their bookkeeping software and ask some questions that are in the action guide and then note their insights. So at this point, I think I'll just quickly open the action guide because there's a lot of stuff in there as well. So in your student materials, for all the action steps, there's an action guide, and there's also a template, a spreadsheet, which is going to be important for the next module for forecasting expenses and sales and budgeting, and an action plan they use at the very end. So in the action guide, I'm just going to skip ahead to the balance sheet, how to interpret. Oops. Getting there. Click. Control click. There we go. How to interpret it. So this is where they'll take their balance sheet and actually look at all these. So they're questions that they'll be able to answer. Are my current assets sufficient to cover my current liabilities? How much cash do I have on hand? Do my long-term liabilities outweigh my estimated future profits? And insights. So we're not going to make this overly complicated for people. So you can see from here, same with when you get to profit and loss, simple questions that they can answer. Is my gross profit high enough to reach my business goals? Are my operating expenses higher or lower than I expected? Is my net profit or loss acceptable, or should I make changes? And they can compare trends. And same with cash flow statement, current cash, projected, where can I optimize? So there's all of this places in the action guide for them to look to write down notes, all right? And that profit and loss, the different components you'll walk through as well. So there's revenue. Just also in terms of profit and loss, I believe this is the one we said is also called an income statement, I think. Yeah. So these are the different components in there. We've got revenue, cost of goods sold. Now, cost of goods sold, you'll hear this term as well. These are direct costs for producing goods and services. All right. These are the things that will vary based on how much you're producing, but it's things like raw materials or hours needed to be spent, or customer support for specific software. So that it will be different depending on the nature of the business. If it's a physical product, there'll be things like raw materials and inventory. Sorry, not inventory, but the raw materials that need to be used to create it. All right. If you're a service business, it'll be the number of hours, stuff like that. So that's all the cost of the goods and, direct labor. Then there's gross profit. All right. The value after you subtract the cost of goods sold from the revenue minus cost of goods sold. And then we've got operating expenses. So those are the things that you need to do just based on your day-to-day operations, like rent or payroll. And then, and lowering that, by the way, some people look to cut costs by cutting the operating expenses, like something in payroll. That, you have to remember, can have a direct impact on the business itself, on the quality of the business. So any decisions there you have to be careful of. Depreciation and amortization, that's an accounting method over time. That it really is, that's something that's going to depend a lot also by accounting rules and stuff. It's worth talking to an accountant, for somebody to talk to an accountant about that and what they can depreciate, like, over 4 years, the value of it goes down, things like that. Interest expense, if you borrow money, that has to go into the profit and loss. That'll be in that statement. Taxes, yes, you have to pay taxes based on where you're located. That goes into the profit and loss statement. You might have different types of taxes based on the type of business or where you are. And then you have that final net profit, or if it's a loss, which we hope it isn't, but early businesses sometimes operate at a loss initially. But this is your final net profit. That's an important number. You'll see a lot of businesses online, a lot of the online businesses talk about their revenue and how they're growing and growing because their revenue is going up. The real number that's important is that profit, the gross profit and the net profit. That's what matters. You can have as much revenue in the world, but if you're not making a profit, the business is not going to be sustainable for you as an individual, especially if you're a small business. That's what I care about myself. Now, if you're a larger business, some do operate at a loss over time, but I don't want to go into that detail as well. All right. Analyzing it, total profit and loss, income streams and expenses. Those are the things to look at. How are we doing on time? Ooh, I'm sorry, we only had an hour and I'm already wasting time here. So I'm going to keep skimming through some of this. And again, if you have questions, just put them into the chat and either I'll answer them or Jacob will answer them. All right. So where was I? Profit and loss. You're looking at your gross profit. Remember, I said the profit is what's really important here, and comparing current and previous. So you'll have people go back to that action guide, and which I showed you here, and write down their own notes. All right, analyzing their own one. Okay, and then the last lesson in here, and looking at the 3 reports, is that cash flow statement. So how much money came in and out, how much cash came in and out. You'll see in there operating activities, investing activities, and financial activities section, net cash flow and an ending cash balance. Those are the main things, and you'll be able to explain each of those. So cash at the beginning and the end of the period, cash going out. Did the cash balance increase or decrease? That's one of the key things to look at in interpreting it. And that's where you're going to not go into a ton of detail for people, but they'll analyze, where's that section? They will analyze the cash, looking at their cash flow statement from year before or previous period and now, and looking at places where they can optimize the cash flow to get more in. All right. So keep it simple. Don't have them ask or answer tons and tons of questions. And then this particular module is all about forecasting and budgeting. And this is a module that's important for your students to be able to make some decisions moving forward about growing their business, or if they're losing money, cutting their losses as well, and then growing to get a profit. All right. And budgeting to make sure they have enough cash for everything. So the first one is forecasting future sales, and there's information in here on how to actually forecast the sales, setting goals, what how much do they actually, how many customers do they hope to have? What do they want to achieve? Forecasting how much each customer spends, and they can look at, and they need to know this for potential investors as well, and risks and opportunities and growth. There's information in here about how to actually do a sales forecast. So looking at previous data, looking at your sales cycle, like do you make more money at, the holiday time? Is more coming in there? Is there a slump at certain times of the year? You need to look at that sort of sales cycle also in terms of how long it takes for cash to come in, sales to come in. So all of that is important, looking at previous data and forecasting ahead. And then there's some general formulas here. So they can just follow a formula of looking at average monthly sales, getting the average monthly sales by looking at total sales revenue divided by the number of months so far in the year, right? So they could very well be doing this mid-year. You can do this forecast at any time. And then to get the rest of it, the sales revenue for the rest of the year, you look at average monthly sales times the number of months left. So very simple formulas for doing that. Average monthly sales rate for the year is basically total divided by the months so far. And then you get the rest by looking at that average one that you just calculated times the number of months left. And that will give forecast for the year. And like I said, annual sales forecast is total sales revenue so far, plus the possible sales revenue for the rest of the year. All right, so you can do it other ways as well, but that's a very simple way to look at it. Also look at factors, state of the economy, competition. So there are other things that can affect sales, pricing strategies, reputation, business location, lots of different things. And then you'll have everyone start to do that in this financial template spreadsheet, which looks like this. So you're going to give them a spreadsheet that has formulas in here already. It has a couple placeholder formulas that they can replace. And there are 3 tabs at the bottom: sales forecast, expense forecast, and budget. And there's instructions for each. And it's going to vary based on each person's business. So we've got it set up as unit 1 price. So this would be based on what they're actually selling, if it's a product or a service, and how many they've sold. And then they just have to fill in the numbers going out, an estimate, and we can add rows in here as well. So people that have a lot of different things that they're selling, you can just add things in there in between. All right. And then at the bottom, it'll have total units, total revenue. So if they need to copy rows because they have more things, make sure it's above this bottom bit, and always check the results, the formulas. Okay. And then for going back to here, we go into the expense, that next tab, different types of expenses. So we talked about some of this before: fixed, variable, direct, that cost of goods sold, and one-off things. You might know that there's one payment you're going to have to do in the spring to renew some software license or invest in a new computer. So those need to go in there as well in the forecast. So we can go back again: fixed expenses paid regularly, regardless. There's a typo. We will re-upload that. Sorry about that. Those are paid regardless of your business. So things that you have to have if you want to stay in business: mortgage payments, employee salaries, taxes. Remember taxes, software, insurance, all those things. Variable can change from month to month. Utilities, all these sorts of things can go up and down. Travel goes up and down. And then I talked before about direct expenses associated to the number of units. So all these things go into your estimated expenses. Raw materials. So if you estimate a certain number of units of a product that you're going to be selling, make sure there's an estimated expense for the raw materials or delivery. If you sell a lot, if you have commissions, even say affiliates, and you know you're going to have you're estimating a certain number of sales, and say you normally have 50% of your sales coming through affiliates, estimate the commissions in there and your expenses as well. And all those different things depending on your business. All right. One-time expenses, I talked about things like equipment, and then you have people go back and fill in that tab of the spreadsheet. Then it's broken up based on those categories. And again, they can adjust that based on their type of business, and it'll calculate it all at the end. Operating expenses, direct expenses, okay? And make sure any one-time expenses are in there as well. All right, we're on to the last thing in that particular module. Going back, any questions so far? What have we got? Charles, Sharyn, I just purchased Essential Finance Skills. Yay, looks like a great back to basics course for myself. Yep, as well as starting my aspiring entrepreneurs audience off on the right foot. Thanks for making this available. Great. I'm so glad. I want to hear how it goes as well when you deliver it to your entrepreneurs, and see how that goes, and any feedback you get. I'm glad we were able to make this available. Excellent. So the last thing in this module was creating a budget. All right, we know how important that is to create a budget. Allocating resources, tracking expenses, monitoring your business progress toward financial goals, all of that, cash, all those things are essential for creating a budget. You don't want to run out of cash. You want to be able to pay your people. You want to be able to pay your bills. You want to see how you're doing in terms of your growth and your goals. All of that's part of the budget, and your forecast sales and expenses are what's going to help you set this up. So the process is looking at your operating expenses, your past revenue, setting money aside for known costs. That's part of your budget. Whoops. Right. So things like rent and supplies, setting money aside for that, setting aside a contingency fund. So part of your budget may be unexpected costs, repair that needs to be done. For example, your computer crashes and you can't retrieve it and you have to get a new one. Things like that you don't necessarily expect, so you need to have a contingency fund. And of course, there's seasonal and industrial trends. You want to budget for that for different types of the year, and have spending goals as well. All right, those are all part of it. And I'll show you that in the spreadsheet. Also, when they do the budget, there are a couple more questions to answer in the action guide. So if there's some sort of deficit, so there's not enough money in your forecast, have to consider ways to reduce expenses and increase income. So this is where these reports start having a real impact on the next sections, then putting together an action plan, seeing where there have to be things that are cut costs or increase revenue. And also, though, if there's a surplus, where you're going to invest it back into the business or save it for other expenses. So that tab in the spreadsheet is the last one. Again, we put the formulas in, and you'll see this is focused in the budget on cash. So what cash is coming in. A lot of these numbers are going to come over from the other spreadsheets in here. So some of them you'll see automatically calculate. All right, you see the formulas at the top here? These automatically calculate from the budget. Total cash in, so all of this comes right in. Cash out, accounts payable, these are manually put in. I'm just looking at the formulas. Owner's distribution. Now we're going to talk a little bit about this in the next module about paying yourself. So as an owner, you need to make sure that you're paying yourself as well. We don't talk about it as a payroll in here and paying a salary. That is something that can be set up. Let's keep it really simple here for small business owners and what they're taking out. And then there's the net cash change. So you can see whether there's enough up and down each month. All right, this is how you put the budget in. And this cash in is coming over from the sales forecast. You can kind of see the the formula up here, and the expenses are coming from the expense forecast tab. So everything's fitting together with the sales forecast and the expense forecast. All right, nice simple spreadsheet. Most of it is done, is ready to go. All right, easy for people to do. And then we have the what about you? So I mentioned you got to make sure you can pay yourself as well. So this is a nice little lesson that can also be pulled out. I think we said on the sales page pulled out as kind of a lead magnet module if you wanted to do something separate, but it's also incredibly important, essential in here as part of it. You've done the sales forecast, expense forecast, budget, but is the business able to support you? And what if it can't? So you want to have people calculate all their needs, their minimum needs, and categorize all of that. And then think about what if they're short on cash, different things they can do with expenses. And there's different ideas there that you can add, and different ideas there, prioritizing bills, all of that. And they can use an expense calculator. There are a lot of those online to do that. Then they have to look at what if there isn't enough. What if the personal income isn't enough, or the business income? So then it can look at different areas, business expenses to cut, debt payments, savings, and then they can go through, again, make some decisions, going back and looking at their budget as well to see if it's not generating enough profit. And there's questions in the action guide for that. Right. Is this the action guide? Yes. Budget, and what about you? So calculate your expenses and then answer some questions. All right. And then we're coming into the last couple modules where they're really going to make some decisions about things. All right. Oh, there's a quick question in here. Let's see what we got. Sheila, you've been looking and waiting for it. I know you have. You've been asking for it. It's been a long time coming. I'm glad we could make it available now, finally. Charles said, are the included spreadsheets for actual real use or class examples? These are for actual real use. They are Excel spreadsheets that you will need to give people and they'll make copies of. You can put your own branding on it first to make sure that your branding is on it. I believe there is a way to do watermarks in Excel spreadsheets in the background as well, so that you can make it look like your own. But I would, add your own branding, your logo, things like that, and then give them to people to be able to use. Right? I find these much easier to use than some of the ones templates that you'll see in Excel itself, because they have ones that are ready made, but they're often much more complicated and difficult to use. Okay, so yes. You get these. It's much more helpful for people if they can apply this to their own business. If you're just giving them samples to look at with theory and they're never applying it, by the time they do get to applying it to their own business, they'll have forgotten everything and you'll have to just start all over again. So take stock and outline a plan. This is it. This is the big module where it all comes together. And you help them first with what are the numbers that tell you how's business, how's your revenue growing. So the revenue growth number, revenue growth is current divided by past revenue. All right. And that came from the profit and loss statement, right, Jacob? Yes. That came from profit and loss statement.
Yes, exactly.
Okay. And then expense growth should have come from, and that is expense growth. Expense growth is current expenses divided by past expenses. Also from there. You're going to correct me, Jacob. I'm looking at you down at the bottom here.
No, that's right. That's right. It's all from the P&L for revenue and expenses.
Okay. It's okay if expenses grow yearly, so long as your revenue is growing proportionately or more, right? And you're scaling up. Gross profit margin. It shows the percentage of revenue that a company retains. And to get that, you subtract all your, let's see, we've got gross profit divided by, wait, we missed something. Gross profit, did we miss something? No, okay. It is the gross profit margin. So gross profit itself is just, you subtract your direct expenses from revenue, all right? And I think we had that earlier on in some of the other numbers. So revenue minus expenses. So we calculated some of that already. And then the margin itself is your profit divided by your revenue. And that is one of the key indicators of the health of your business. There's other expenses, things like taxes and stuff, but this is the core of the health of the business. And we have some different margins in here as examples that are healthy for different industries. You can include this, not include this, update it, but this gives some barometer for what is a healthy gross profit margin. And there are different ones in here. The net profit margin is after all those other expenses are accounted for, right? So it's net profit divided by revenue. So you took the gross profit, subtracted all the rest of the expenses, and then divide that. That's the net profit divided by revenue. All right. That will be lower than your gross profit margin, more than likely, especially if you're spending a lot on growth. But the goal is to always be profitable, for always be positive. And this is where, in these action steps, you'll have everybody actually do that and compare their numbers, calculate all the ratios, compare their numbers, and then create the financial action plan. Do you need to cut costs? What does your business need? There's some different scenarios. So if your business isn't making enough profit, all this is going back, looking at those numbers, looking at the reports, and making decisions about where to cut and add. If it's not making profit, if you're having a hard time running your business with the money you have or the cash you have, if you want to be more efficient, like increase your revenue faster than your expenses, being prepared for a downturn, all these things. So you might look at the biggest expenses and try to lower them, look at where you're overspending, look for new automations, lots of different options here for costs. And increasing revenue, of course, something a lot of people focus on. You want to get more funds, pay off debts, invest, you can find new customers. There can be a mix of things here. So find new customers and also focus on improving customer retention rate. So the two together can give you more revenue. If you have a unique product, you can increase your price. You can expand your product line and offer new things. You can look at your operations and streamline them to improve efficiency, but also look at increasing revenue. So there's a lot of different things in here that people can do, and they need to put it in the action plan. They need to increase cash flow for expenses, or customers who are taking too long to pay their bills, so you don't have enough cash coming in, or you have high fixed costs and need to do something there. Again, you could look at things like product pricing, improving your money collection process, so getting people to pay on time, getting better payment terms from suppliers, so maybe spreading that out further, reducing expenses. These are all things that can affect cash if you need to bring in more cash. So that's where we put in a nice, simple action plan. And we have a template in here for that as well, that you will want to brand as your own. And it's nice and simple. It's a checklist of tasks first to complete. So these are all the tasks from the course that people need to make sure that they've done. So it's all pulled together, because I know we talked about a lot in the last hour of all these things in the course. This is the checklist of everything. Then there's the actions to actually take: cut costs, increase revenue, increase cash flow, and have them plan what they're going to do here. And this is actually a great document to put into something like Canva also, or just add your branding to it. All right, and other actions at the end. So I love this. Nice, simple way to pull everything together. we're coming to the end. So I think that is actually the end. Yes, we come to the summary and next steps. And there's a few things to just have them review what they've learned, some additional tips, and then making sure their action plan is finally done. Whew, that was a lot. So I wasn't meaning to go through the whole course here, but I have done. And while you think about any questions that you have, I will show you a couple things that are in here. Let me close out a couple things here. Oops, what have I got? Oh, actually, first, before I do that, let me just remind you again of, I'm going to put us back on screen again. And I just want to remind you again of the URL for this course before I show you the bonus. So it's contentsparks.com/smallbizfinance. All right. That's where you can get the course. And that's what that sales page looks like as well. But let me just quickly show you the bonus, because there is a nice little bonus with this course. It is a mindset quiz that's in a Word doc as well as in Canva. So you can make it look nice. I'll hide that once more. So this is also something that you can use as a lead magnet to get people to build your list and get people interested in the course. Just what's your current mindset around managing your finances? There's 5 easy questions in here, how they feel, and then there's a nice scoring key in here as well. So they score themselves, and then there's a key to the results, all of which is, you can benefit by taking our course. And so you can set that up in any kind of quiz builder or on your website, or have it just as a PDF you send out. But if it's something where it's online, you can make it that they have to provide their email in order to get the results. And that way you're building your list with it. And it's also in Canva. Let me see if I can open the Canva. So for Canva, it's a PDF that you then click the link on. It will ask you to use the template. So you're not going to actually just get it, but I'll just give you a preview of it. So you can see it's in different colors, much nicer. Let me see if I can open this without, yeah, I'm already logged in. Okay, so it gives some instructions, and then you can just go through and change colors. I have a whole tutorial on this where you can do things like primary, and at the bottom, change all, and that will change your colors everywhere. Or let's make it something that's a little easier to see. That'll change that color everywhere else in the document. But if you need help on that, I do have a tutorial that I can show you. All right. Now I'm going to close this all up and come back to you. And let me see what kind of questions we've got going here. Let me just show the banner. Okay, that's the URL. What have we got left here? Jacqueline asked, what's the bonus? Okay, so now you saw what the bonus is, that mindset quiz. All right. So look at that. Look out for that in the folder. It'll arrive in your email. All right. It's just available for the few days during the launch. And that's a fun quiz to use. Charles said, love it, Sharyn. Yay. And Charles also said, thanks for joining us and for your insight, Jacob. Yes, Jacob can answer any questions that I can't, which is a lot more. And said, is the bonus part of the product download? I missed it mentioned on the sales page. It's not in the download. It'll be in an email that you'll get. I have it set up as an automation in my email platform. So when you buy, it should get sent to you unless you buy with a different email or you're looking at a different email. So if you don't see it, just send an email to Fiona at support@contentsparks.com. So that is support@contentsparks.com for questions. Okay. Or just that. Okay. Go back. Where's my comments? Questions. All right. I only see one more. Got it. Great intro program. Great, Jacqueline. Thanks. I hope you enjoy it. That's all the questions I see here. If you have any more, you have like 1 minute to put them in. Otherwise, tag me. I'll see it on Facebook. I don't really see I don't get alerts on YouTube. So if you're watching on YouTube, I may not see that, but you can always send questions, as I said, to support@contentsparks.com. I'll put that up again, and I'll put the URL up again so you can see that. But tag me at Sharyn Sheldon, and I will look out for those. And again, if I can't answer them, I'll go over to Jacob and he will answer them. Therese said, thanks, Jake. Thank you, Sharyn and Jacob. Thank you. There said, whoops, I had it there. Love the courses. Will buy more after I finish the others purchased. All right. Yeah, we got to get you using those courses. Don't try and be a perfectionist and change too much. Get it up there. Even if you have to just use the slides and the action guide, you can get the course up there really quickly that way. You've got the materials and you have notes to be able to speak through it. Break it up into short little things. You can drip it out as well. Use an online course platform, but get it up there and start marketing it so that you can get more and start building a whole training library. Okay. Lots of good stuff. We'll have to watch the replay to absorb. Yeah, there was a lot to take in there. And of course, if you buy the course, you can go through it at your own pace as well. And there's a great cheat sheet in there which summarizes it. I didn't show you the cheat sheet, so I'll just do one more minute. I promise this will be it. 1 minute to show you the cheat sheet because I really think this is a big help. And that is in your student materials in here. So this is going to be really helpful for you to just see a high-level summary of the course, and your students will love this too. There's just 1 or 2 pages on each, and you can quickly see the summary of those key points in there. All right, really good to use as well. Okay. Therese, any platforms you recommend? I assume you mean for courses. So I've been using New Zenler lately, and it's on my resources page. I also use Teachable, but I've moved to New Zenler. I'm trying to think what the URL is. I think it's, I'm going to put it in the comments and hope that it's the right one. Let me try this. If it's not this, actually, let me try it first and I'll show you it. Let's see if this one worked. No, it is without the R. So it's going to be contentsparks.com, New Zenler. Okay, that's the platform I've been using. And I like it because it has everything in it. It's really, really easy to use. Okay. It has email, it has Zoom integrated, has absolutely everything. The only thing I don't like about it is when it comes to designing your sales page, there are so many options that it takes a while. So it helps if either you spend the time making one template or you create one that's, you get someone to create it. And there are a lot of people in their group. They have a very active Facebook group too. All right. That's everything. I'm going to let you go, let Jacob go, because I know he has more to do working with all these small business owners. All right. Thank you, everyone. Thanks again for listening. I really appreciate you coming, and I will see you soon. Take care.